Argentina is a developing country. It is the second largest national economy in South America. Behind Brazil, Argentina benefits from rich natural resources, a highly literate population, an export-oriented agricultural sector, and a diversified industrial base. Argentina's economic performance has historically been very uneven, with high economic growth alternating with severe recessions, particularly since the late 20th century. Since income maldistribution and poverty have increased, early in the 20th century, Argentina had one of the 10 highest per capita GDP levels globally, on par with Canada and Australia and surpassing both France and Italy. Argentina's currency declined by about 50% in 2018 to more than 38 Argentine pesos per US dollar. And, as of that year, is under a standby program from the International Monetary Fund. In 2019, it fell further by 25%. Argentina is considered an emerging market by the FTSE Global Equity Index, and one of the G20 major economies. Before the 1880s, Argentina was a relatively isolated backwater, dependent on the salted meat, wool, leather, and hide industries for both the more significant part of its foreign exchange and the generation of domestic income and profits. The Argentine economy began to experience swift growth after 1880 through the export of livestock and grain commodities, and British and French investment, marking the beginning of a 50-year era of significant economic expansion and mass European immigration. From 1880 to 1905, this expansion resulted in a 7.5-fold growth in GDP during its most vigorous period, averaging about 8% annually. One important measure of development, GDP per capita, rose from 35% of the United States average to about 80% during that period. Growth then slowed considerably, such that by 1941 Argentina's real per capita GDP was roughly half that of the US. Even so, from 1890 to 1950, the country's per capita income was similar to that of Western Europe, although income in Argentina remained considerably less evenly distributed, according to a study by Bertain and Pelger and Twardek, where the authors compare anthropometric values, i.e., height with real wages. Argentina's GDP increased for the decades after 1870. Before 1910, however, the heights have been left unaffected. This, in turn, suggests that the increase in the population's welfare did not occur during the income expansion of the given period. The Great Depression caused Argentine GDP to fall by a fourth between 1929 and 1932. Having recovered its lost ground by the late 1930s partly through import substitution, the economy continued to grow modestly during World War II. The war led to reduced availability of imports and higher prices for Argentine exports that combined to create a $1.6 billion United States dollars cumulative surplus, a third of which was blocked as inconvertible deposits in the Bank of England by the Roker and Seaman Treaty. Benefiting from innovative self-financing and government loans alike, value added in manufacturing nevertheless surpassed that of agriculture for the first time in 1943. Employed over 1 million by 1947, and allowed the need for imported consumer goods to decline from 40% of the total to 10% by 1950. The populist administration of Juan Perón nationalized the central bank, railways, and other strategic industries and services from 1945 to 1955. The subsequent enactment of developmentalism after 1958, though partial, was followed by a good 15 years. Inflation first became a chronic problem during this period in Latin America as well as the region's highest paid, most unionized working class. However, the economy declined during the military dictatorship from 1976 to 1983 and for some time afterward. The dictatorship's chief economist, José Alfredo Martínez de Hoz, advanced a corrupt, anti-labor policy of financial liberalization that increased the debt burden and interrupted industrial development and upward social mobility. Over 400,000 companies of all sizes went bankrupt by 1982. And neoliberal economic policies prevailing from 1983 through 2001 failed to reverse the situation. Record foreign debt interest payments, tax evasion, and capital flight resulted in a balance of payments crisis that plagued Argentina with severe stagflation from 1975 to 1990, including a bout of hyperinflation in 1989 and 1990. Attempting to remedy this situation, economist Domingo Cavallo pegged the peso to the US dollar in 1991 and limited the money supply's growth. His team then embarked on a path of trade liberalization, deregulation, and privatization. Inflation dropped to single digits, and GDP grew by 1/3 in 4 years. External economic shocks and a dependency on volatile short-term capital and debt to maintain the overvalued fixed exchange rate diluted benefits, causing erratic economic growth from 1995 and the eventual collapse in 2001. That year and the next, the economy suffered its sharpest decline since 1930. By 2002, Argentina had